That's fantastic work, Anna. It it feels so right. You know, listening to this, listening to the mock-up and reading along, and it just has this kind of sense of inevitability to it. And that is when you know you have done your orchestration right. You know, the general shape of your proportions have really fallen into place. So, all the same, I think there are a few things I can help you with. So let's run through them, and as before, I'll just take as much time as I need to explain everything, and we won't worry too much about going over an hour or anything. These evaluations seem like they're they're going like hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes, that kind of thing. So, excuse me, it's very early in the morning here. So let's let's start out with the evaluation criteria. And, as usual, I need to sort of move some of my stuff around here on my desk. All right. So, one thing I was really impressed by was how you were thinking about a lot of the same things that I was thinking, right? Almost reading my mind in a way. And, addressing, like, for instance, the first concern, pitch weight, possibly feeling limited if the transcription is exactly like the piano part, keeping the weight in the middle register of the piano. So you didn't do that. You expanded nicely. The next question is thematic material possibly sounding repetitive if orchestrated exactly the same way throughout. So this is kind of fun. Is that even though, for the most part, the upper winds are the same in both parts, the context around them is so different that it really feels like a different orchestration. In a sense, it is a different orchestration because of all the things that were added to it. And people don't appreciate enough what a cool trick that is. That one approach in a certain group of instruments might work just as well when other things are added to it and at a louder volume. I also really loved the dynamic flux in here. Your willingness to drop the dynamic and so on. So we'll discuss this in detail in a second, but first I'm going to jump back and talk a little bit about your scoring of the harp. So I feel that right in here, you drop down to mezzo forte with your strings, and it's very light on the winds. It's just A2 flutes and piccolo, and the harp is audible, right? You can hear it in the mock-up, and it will be audible in like a live situation. So that's very nicely done. However, right in here, you can mark it for triple F all you like, but the sound of the harp is just not loud enough to compete when you have brass and horns. Like horns, in the first place, the trumpets the trumpets are doing something similar to the harp, so they will outweigh the harp in terms of their their projection, and then the sound of the horns will absorb the sound of the harp, right? So it's like it's two different things fighting the harp. Like you have the projection of one instrument to worry about, and including others, right? And then you have the absorption of yet another instrument. So like things like pizzicato and mallet instruments that like especially xylophone and so on, right? Those things absorb the sound of the harp, and also like this sort of this cooler sound of the horns also takes away, robs the harp of its ability to be heard. Now, right in here, you do have pizzicato going on at the same time. However, in this case, the harp is playing an octave higher than the instrument's playing pizzicato. So that really helps a lot, I would say. So we will discuss the scoring in a little bit more detail, but let's jump back now to the first section right in here. We'll discuss the orchestration of these two mirror sections. So starting off here, nice and strong, you got your bum, 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 and I feel that the little melodic fragment here is nicely scored. You've got it doubling first and second oboe, and then piccolo an octave higher, and then violin, just firming up the the winds. And then we've got these pizzicato double stops, the fifths and the sixths. Those are also very effective. And then, some of these pitches doubled, like the clarinets are doubling the violas and so on. So this is nice. It just gives it a little bit of a bite, right? The pizzicato here gives the winds a bit of a bite, and essentially it's scoring scoring out the right hand and the left hand as they're working together. Now I thought it was very, very nice that you didn't try to you didn't fall into that trap of tying the B, right? Of starting on a B and tying into an accent, right? That were in some scores. So it's good you avoided that. You foresaw that was going to be a problem, or maybe you just didn't even think about it and you did what was right to begin with. I don't know. So now, now that you've set this up and it's looking really, really good, now we look at this mirror section and we've got the same pitches more or less spread across the string section in arco, right? And that works very well, I feel. And then adding to this, down there on this E, we've got bassoons. I would say that, like, if you're going to score all the way up to F here in bass clef, then there's no need to score these E's and F's in tenor clef before, right? But actually, this is kind of strange. You cut back to tenor clef here, so I would say get rid of this bass clef. No bassoonist will have any problem reading this low E in tenor clef. Okay, so if you're going to a bass clef here because you were worried about reading E, but that's really no problem. That's just the bottom space in tenor clef, right? So get rid of this, get rid of that. Just have it tenor clef all the way through. Okay, but let's go back to the scoring. So you've got this E, and the trumpets above, and then now here you've got this nice little harmony here in the horns. Yeah. Right, and you've got a key signature in your horns. I think you can get rid of your key signature here, right? So that this would be read as F sharp by the horn player and the conductor and everybody else. So yeah, just in this case, this kind of scoring, get rid of the key signature. All right. So you've got the E fifths outlined, and and I think that'll work very nicely too, right? Got the bum, 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 bum. And this is nice, the contrast here in these two parts, like jumping down, right? It's very, very nice, and it sets this part up very, very well too, right? So everything is working here except for the harp, which could just, doesn't really need to play anything. There is nothing about this. It's superfluous in a sense, right? Now I'm just going to point out one more thing to you, Anna, and you may have seen some of this in a previous evaluation, but so here you've got rolls, and here you have not rolls, right? You have no rolls. So the thing about it is that harp will usually roll everything in this kind of situation, unless you tell them not to, right? If you say non-arpeggiando. But the thing about it is that sometimes rolls in a situation like this can be audible, right? So if you had a big, huge roll, a hand-over-hand roll where you were really recovering 3 or 4 notes per hand, and it was really going across the harp. You've heard that kind of playing, right? Kind of thing. Just really, it's almost like a magical spell. It's not something that you can do like this, like at a fast speed, like play on every single beat. but it still is something that has a chance of being heard, sort of like glissando. Or if the weight of this were lower, if the pitch weight of the orchestra were lower, then the harp could possibly play patterns of figuration above the orchestra. So that might be a possibility in certain circumstances. So that sort of figuration, big rolls, glissando, right? So all of that is audible, but what is not audible is playing chords without rolls, right? So the way that you got this scored, this is not going to be audible because it's so, because of everything else. But but the harp trying to play against a big chord in the rest of the orchestra and playing without rolling, it's just as much as to make it invisible, right? The roll, the having the pitches in the rolled chord happen at different times. That is what makes it audible, right? So when you take away the roll, then the harp just gets sucked into the texture of the orchestra and disappears, right? So I mean, it's fine if the harp adds to a texture, and but when the harp doesn't even add to the texture, right? It doesn't matter if the harp is there or not. Then you might as well leave the harp out, right? So that, I'm afraid, that is what's going to happen here. Okay. So now let's go to to this next section with its criteria. So, one of which is melodic development soaring quite high, and to the uppermost orchestral register, and the accompaniment figures covering a wide range of pitches. So we already discussed the accompaniment figures and the harp and so on. And here you're dividing up this figure between 3 different string instruments, and I think that's really powerful. It's really nice. Sorry about all my throat clearing. I know it's not the most beautiful thing to hear. So, right here you have got... It's an interesting approach. So you've got piccolo and flute playing in octaves, with the first violin supporting the lower part of the octave. Then here you sort of jump down an octave, or drop down an octave, with flutes and clarinet playing together, and then you come together at the end. So I would say that this is beautifully scored right here at the end. The piccolo coming in so that it gets that upper curve that goes all the way up to the D, without pushing the flute up to the same D, which is possible on flute, but it's just not very pretty, right? It's kind of an ugly sound, or not an ugly sound. It's sort of I don't want to say things are beautiful or ugly. That's a very subjective judgment, but it's a pitch that is not the most under control, right? It's not the most musical pitch. And here you have the violins joining in, and then the first violin jumping back up to get that D. Now your violins can come in; they can jump back to the upper octave earlier. If you wanted to jump back to A here, if you wanted to go A D E A F D, right? You don't have to. These 2 pitches could be an octave higher if you wanted them to. Now, the concern that I've got here is, are you spoiling? Are you giving away the surprise of going all the way up to the high D? You see, here the piccolo is playing very, very high. It's playing an octave above these violin notes. These violin notes going all the way up to high G. And the piccolo goes all the way up to high G. So once the piccolo has gone all the way up to high G, then what's so surprising about this D? Do you see what I mean? Like, usually the proportions in your score are very, very well planned out of one section leading to another, and one section contrasting another. But right in here, I would say, maybe you need to rethink this a little. Maybe the piccolo could be doubling the flute, and then right here going to the going to the do you see what I mean? It just sort of feels like you are spoiling the surprise by going up to G here, and then the D here is no longer extraordinary, right? It's like, oh yeah, we're going up there high again, right? So the problem is that we lose the sense of suspense built into the line, right? Right, that final climb. Well, we've already been there now, right? So think about that. Is that something that you might want to change? But I love the dynamic changes inside here. I think that's nice. I think mezzo forte going down to mezzo piano is not very big of a change. I think people have started to comment, noticing the ways that I compare it from going from blah to bleh. You know what I mean? It's like it's a dynamic that has less color going down to another dynamic that has even less color, right? So maybe if you drop down to piano, then you have somewhere to come from and really push into this fortissimo. Anyways, something to think about. One last thing I just wanted to mention right in here, that this feels a little fussy. This 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3, and then the solo comes in here. Maybe a better way to arrange this would be to have second and third play these, and then have second and first. So that way the first gets the bump, 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 and then back to second and third. And see, here you don't have to go, yeah, dun, 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 because that's not the melody. The melodic fragment is just dun, 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 right? It's not dun, 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 dun. Don't feel like you have to go dun, 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 dun. You don't have to do that, right? Same thing here. Yep, up, 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 You don't have to finish. It is essentially, like you can just leave these out, right? It doesn't necessarily make the that's not the way the phrasing is running here. So it's dun 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 dun, right? It's not dun 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 dun. You see, so you don't have to think of the first as having to complete some sort of little phrase or some sort of little motive. That's not the case in here. So if you must break up the trumpets, then do it this way. Second and third to here, and then first and second. Second to third, first and second, and then the first continuing on. Yeah, this is very nicely scored right in here. Okay, so let's talk about that going on. You've got your ba 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 da 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 da. Yeah, so that's really, really nicely done. The bass clarinet and the cello working together, so it has a lighter sound. You're thinking about a lot of things. And I like the fact that it's just trumpet at the beginning, just first trumpet, and then the other instruments joining in and getting higher and so on and so forth, right? So just one last little comment about this problem in here. In some other scores that I've received, the piccolo went up to G again, right? And then there was this big rush going up to the E, right? And I feel was spoiled because you'd already gone up to F and G, right? If you were to take that approach here, so if that isn't something that is desirable here, then why is it desirable here? Do you see what I mean? So it's just I'm sorry. I am just arguing my point to you, but it's really for you to accept or reject, right? I am not trying to win you over to my point of view. I'm just mentioning why I, as an orchestrator, would probably make a different decision, right? But you as an orchestrator should make your own decisions. I'm not trying to overly influence you too much, but just explain the reasons why. And the percussion in here is all fine. So that leads to this. And so speaking of proportions, I feel that that was just, it was really, really great. Actually, let's jump back. So you have, yeah, forte, but not fortissimo, and then dropping down a little bit and coming into fortissimo, but not hugely fully orchestrated, and then backing off again to mezzo forte and forte on the solo, that's fine, and then pushing into this, and then having this finally a massive tutti in fortissimo, right? And it's fairly nicely done. One thing you might want to think about is the way that you have set everything up with the rhythmic phrasing is very beautiful, right? So it's and then the according to the weight of where everybody comes in, it's very, very clear that the rhythmic phrase starts on the second beat and ends on the first, right? Ba 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 da 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 dun, right, and then you end the game here. And I really love the way that you put the emphasis at the beginning of each of these little rhythmic phrases, right? Now, once again, harp has got no chance here. It really can't contribute very much. And I respect the fact that you don't have, like, you're putting the harp in a place where there really isn't a lot of stuff going on, so that maybe the harp could add a little bit to what's going on here. But that would actually be more appropriate, I'd say, in the way that you want to use this. It would be more appropriate perhaps to use like xylophone, not xylophone, or glockenspiel is what I meant to say. So I think glockenspiel would add more to this than a harp would, and it kind of performs some of the same function. Okay, so the big concern getting to this section in my evaluation criteria is upper middle register continuing on, feeling relentless if there's no textural contrast. And of course, just as I mentioned, you do have a beautiful textural contrast. Now, as to the orchestration, about the only thing I'd be concerned about is the possible danger that by keeping the pitches in the same place, that it feels as if the rhythmic phrasing starts a beat earlier, right? But that's not how it goes, is it? It's bum 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 bum, right? So once again, is the piccolo too high right in here? It's just I don't know. Maybe that is not a concern, right? I love the directness of this right in here. I chose to trade off between orchestral groups. It's another thing that could be done, but I feel that your approach is fine. I love the high contrabassoon in here. I think that's very effective, especially as doubling the double basses and all of these pitches. They're very nicely placed. And then the bassoons and bass clarinets working together here. The trombones. I just feel it's all very nicely scored. Very, just really great brass scoring in this in general. And I love the very judicious use of timpani, right? Bum bum pow pow. Bum 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 bum. Right? So it's really has a wonderful sense of punctuation. And then that leads to this. And I like the fact that you do not punctuate these pitches. You just let them run, right? It's like a little runaway child, and you don't really know where it's heading or if it's even following the meter, right? You assume so, but you don't really know where that kid is going to end up. One thing that just to recommend to you, in the original score, there is a crescendo and then a diminuendo. Right? It's something you could easily employ here. Everybody dropping down to forte, and then crescendo to here, and then diminuendo here to a mezzo forte. And so I feel it gives some life to the line, a little bit of color. So it isn't just a row of staccatos, right? With a little diminuendo at the end. But as far as the final concern for section A, maintaining a driving staccato and transitioning smoothly into the next passage, you do that beautifully, right? So that fulfills, that ticks all the boxes, as they say. And I feel that the pizzicato comes in nicely with the rest of these instruments. You could easily add viola in here if you wanted to, because you've got enough weight in the winds, but you don't have to. It's very nicely done at this point. Now, going forwards to the beginning of the B section, I once again feel that this is very nicely orchestrated. So you've got A2 clarinets. Now, just being aware that they are going to phase, right? There is sometimes there is no difference between A2 winds and just a solo wind line in a mock-up, right? So the mock-up may not be telling you that this B B B B A ba 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 bum, which is actually sounding A, not B. But it'll have a phased sound because of the clarinets not playing. There'll just be a tiny bit of separation between the actual pitches, and they don't play vibrato to kind of blend that together. So the clarinet A2 sound is a phased sound, but I mean it will still sound nice right in here. It has a slight coarseness to it, which is has that sort of village sound to it. Like perhaps being played on the original chalumeau, which was a folk instrument, right? So it has that folk kind of a feeling to it, I feel. And then of course the bassoons working together. Right. Now here, this is kind of interesting. You take A2 bassoons up into the tenor register, but so long as they are being doubled by arco violas, then there's absolutely no concern about the sound of those bassoons being kind of coarse. And they'll blend together really. I mean, the violas plus bassoons has such a beautiful sound, and that is something that because of the nature of the A string, the sound of the A string in the first string in the viola, you can push things up to, I would say, up to G here, up to A, possibly even B, before you start to feel, oh, there's A2 bassoons up there is driving me crazy. So I feel that so long as you have all of the violas playing and the sound is nicely balanced, then I think it works really, really well. Now there's really, like, here you have bass clarinet trading off to bassoons, and there is really no reason why your A2 bassoons couldn't just play the whole thing. This trade-off here is written into the hands of the pianist, but there's absolutely no reason why the line cannot all be played by one instrument, right? So right here you've got the violas just picking up after the first beat, and of course they cannot reach all the way down to this A. But the bassoons can reach down to that A, right? So I think, in terms of the continuity of the line, there's really no reason why the bassoons have to pick up on beat 2.5. Now, one last little comment here, and that is, besides just these lovely little notes here placed, mezzo piano is absolutely perfect for the support here in the horn. But the concern that going back to the criteria, contrast of color, breadth of texture, you are handling that very nicely. Maintaining differentiated roles in closely spaced melodies, overlapping accompaniment figures, highlighting inner voices, you're doing that beautifully as well. So but that last concern that I wanted to touch on was keeping high interjecting notes from sounding too glaringly repetitive, right? And so the way that you do it is you play them fearlessly with spice to them, right? This bum 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 breep, dun 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 dun. That's so nicely done. And then here's the second incidents here. Yeah, I'll give you this. This harp will work all right. Maybe like a sudden, like a little glissando. Rim. It doesn't have to cover very many notes. Might actually help out with these, with the sense of rolling and so on. Accents are something else that has a tendency to bury the harp, right? If everybody's playing these because accents are a very abrupt attack, right? An abrupt, pointed attack. So that's something else that sort of puts the harp at a disadvantage, right? So the harp cannot compete. However, you don't have anything all that big playing at the same time, and this is fine as well. So this chord right in here, along with the pizzicato. See, the pizzicato will swallow the harp to a degree, but you can mark up, right? You can mark the dynamics of the harp up a little. But if you really want this to come through, then the harp could voice this chord differently or do something else, and you could also leave the harp out, and it would probably sound just as good, right? But I would say leave it in; it's fine. Now, going on further into B, you've got this massive weight, and here's where I think that it's just so heavy, right? I think that maybe 4 horns is a bit much. You know what I mean? I could see this being doubled right here, but this will be perhaps much stronger than you expect, right? It will outweigh a lot of else what's going on here. Like you would want to either bring forward the strings to make them stronger in the light of this weight, or you would want to put the strings back or put the horns back, which you don't want to do, right? Because you're already moderating yourself by saying mezzo forte. So mezzo piano is worse in my view. So yeah, so bum bum ba da 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 dun. It's just really huge with 4 horns. If you think about the Rimsky-Korsakov balance, right? 2 horns equals 1 heavy brass player, right? So if you are thinking along that balance, then with 2 horns on the melody, you are already balanced with everything else. But I mean, if you really feel the need to throw in all 4 horns, it's fine. But just the balance of everything else is going to go away, and of course, the harp here will be once again superfluous unless you have a little, you replace this with a little glissando up to the E, just a very short one, almost like grace notes. And you could also achieve the same exact effect with with just the xylophone. Excuse me, I keep saying xylophone when I mean glockenspiel. So you could have the same effect with glockenspiel doubling this. As you want to with harp here, it would be clearer and cleaner, and it would compete with everything else that's going on here. Adding the weight in the violins and so on. Now, I really love the way this and the time that you did it before is setting this up. Right? It's all of a piece, and I think it works really nice to tie everything together. Right? And then the reaction. Okay, so all right, so just to point something out to you, Anna, is that this line does not end on a sounding B, here written C sharp. It ends on the triplet. And it's just the most annoying thing because of the page turn or some other kind of thing, or just the way that things are notated. It really looks as if the line is ending on a B. But the B is the entrance of the melody, and the completion of the counter melody is on the triplet, right? At the same time that the B dun 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 transposed, right? So yeah. So is that something you could possibly rethink? I like the doubling, the second violins, and I actually like the fact that the clarinets come in and they are unaccompanied at the beginning, and then the violins come in and support them. That you can really hear the entrance of the clarinets, and then past that, the violins doubling them up is not such a big deal. But I just really feel that the harp scoring in here is really going to be hard to hear, or perhaps not effective at all, because here it's very low, right? It's bass clef scoring right in the lower middle register of the harp, right where you've got all of this weight coming from your trumpets and horns, right? The horns all by themselves will outweigh the harp right in here if it were not for the added weight of the winds, right? So right in this section, the criteria say keeping triplets from overwhelming the melodic line above and widely reaching left-hand patterns. All right, so these are two things I think that that did not get added to your score, and I think it's still a place where you could possibly rethink things. There still is time, there still is room, right, for you to add your right? It just really misses that sense of propulsion, right, of momentum that is in this section. It's just really, I mean, the way that you've scored it, it's sort of sinister, right? It's kind of, we're heading into unsure, uncertain ground here emotionally, right? But the thing about it is that you sort of have underscored or underplayed the triplets, right? You notice in the mock-up they really don't come through very strongly compared to the melody, and part of that is because you have a lot of harmonic weight over the same exact area as the triplets, right? So that these harmonies here are sitting on the same notes as these violas, right? And so the violas are already at a disadvantage. Then you take away their doubling. You can hear them fine at the beginning because of the doubling of the horns, right? But there's nothing accented as it is in the. Did you notice in the piano score, Falla pushes at the he's got these, he's got the stress here. I would say he's probably not. You probably don't need the accent as much as you need, like, maybe a tenuto mark at the beginning. Da 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 da, right, rather than da 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 da, right. But I would say put in some stresses at the beginning of these, right, so that they stand out a little bit clearer. Yeah. And then, I mean, the melody is nicely scored. Bum 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 ba dun dun dun, and you've also got clarinets supporting and so on. And then you are sort of subtracting elements a little bit, right in here, right, while adding others. So like you're taking out the clarinet, but you're adding trumpet. So I'm not sure which trumpet this is intended to be. I think you left out the entrance, right? Is it the first horn? Is it second horn? Who's playing right here? Right. So, yeah. So just be careful about clouding up the space where you really want this yadadum dadadum. It's kind of strange. You do this again. You throw in horn for just 2 bars, but then right where the those triplets really need support going into this crescendo, they are absent, and there's also the absence of that in the bass, bum 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 bum, right? So I feel that those elements really, they need more attention. I feel that you need to put in the leaping bass, and I feel that you need to underline your triplets in a way, in an instrument that won't get swallowed. Like perhaps you were thinking, oh well, I'll double them with horn here, and I'll double them with harp in here, and that will be enough to support the viola line. But this is an invisible instrument, in the face of the scoring here, right? You can mark it mezzo forte to fortissimo all you like, but it still doesn't have the projection to compete with the horns in here, let alone the trumpet and the weight of the winds and the strings around it, right? So I would say just find some instrument that can supplement these triplets right in here that is better than the harp. As for the harp, I mean, you could probably leave out this entire section here of harp, or rewrite it to emphasize tones that are easier to hear higher up on the harp with this kind of murky scoring, right? Sorry, I mean, when I say murky scoring, that's a compliment, right? It's supposed to be murky and suspenseful, right? But but yeah, and I like your your little rolls and things like that. This is all very effective, dramatic scoring. It's very nice, and I like you adding the octave here. Which will catch the overtones from the trumpet. I'm assuming this is a solo trumpet right here. And as I said before, this was really nice, this sort of flurry right in here. So, yeah, so before I turn the page, so just think about those things. The triplets need to be stronger and more emphatic, right? And, dun, 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 but still not overwhelming the melody, right? So they really have to be an element. And I think you're missing out something here, Anna, by not having the bass leaping around. All right, going on. So it's sort of more of the same. Once again, the harp just really doesn't have much power in here. Now this is beautiful, though. This is beautiful. You can hear it in the mock-up. You will hear it on the stage. It's exactly right. But I would say don't diminuendo, and don't cut it down to mezzo forte. Keep it at forte, and then just have it play. You could even have a little crescendo and then a tiny diminuendo at the end, and have everybody else fade away, so that the harp rings out beautifully clearly. Yeah, just, once again, nice scoring, but the trombones, you bring in the trombones, and it's a beautiful idea, but it's just all the more weight in the same register that will drown out the harp, right? So I'm not trying to talk you out of having trombones. I'm trying to talk you out of having harp here, right? Or just recommend that the harp will be invisible. Just let you know that is the outcome, and you can hear it in the mock-up, right? You can barely hear the harp contributing anything there, right? It doesn't really, and once again, we need support on the triplet line, and even here where you die out, you need some support, and we do need the leaping bass line, right, to just kind of have the momentum of that passage. But, aside from all of these little caveats and warnings and everything else, I think you feel it's really beautifully orchestrated. It's missing some elements according to Falla's original score. Right? Now, when we get to this section right here, the question is of the allargando expansion being convincing, right? And here you've chosen not to score the gradual introduction of higher and higher pitches throughout the bar and sustaining upwards, right? You just have basically this score sort of pushing in, and there's a roll and everything else. So, if that is what you want there, and it works fine, right? It's just, think about the original score and the way that it ba 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 da 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 da. Are you possibly missing an opportunity to add suspense to your score that is cumulative until finally it's unbearable, and then you state the melody here? Now, keep in mind here, you actually have a really beautiful melodic balancing at the beginning, forte espressivo, but then you diminuendo to mezzo piano, and I don't feel like you need to go that far down, right? And then it's kind of piano from there on. But I mean, it still works. It's fine. It's just, yeah. I mean, it's all right. I won't critique it too much, but yeah, I would say you just really have to keep everything fairly well down. Now, right in here, I think you missed something in your transcription. This pattern starts here, right? And it puts this little thing here in the context of superimposing D minor, right? Like it's ending on a D, right? So it's superimposing D minor into the structure, onto the structure of the harmony. So, and that isn't quite expressed in the harmony here. And there are, I mean, I'm noticing with a lot of these scores there are harmonic mistakes, and that's, you know, that's understandable. These are big projects to do all the way through, but I would say in general there needs to be more proofing from everybody, and also just, you know, just to point out, I did provide I did provide a template that has all, except for one or two little places, it does have all of the correct notes in it, right? So, you know, maybe people could maybe trust the template more, except for that one B that I marked as a B flat. Anyhow, okay, so yeah, but here, starting at C, I really love the mysteriousness of this. About the only thing I feel I miss is is that the little working back and forth of the 16th notes, right? And here you have a harp right exactly where you could be using it to somehow express that very subtly if you wanted to. The, you know, the little interjecting sixteenths on a B flat, right? I think that, you know, you could have a little bit of motion in there that, you know, doesn't subtract from anything else, but just adds a little bit more syncopation into the line. As you've conceived it, it's fine, but I would say that, you know, especially since you suppressed some of the rhythmic elements here, particularly the bass line, that leaping bass line, it almost feels, you know, going forwards, like with that little, those 16th syncopations removed, I feel like we're further limiting the rhythmic scope, the rhythmic possibilities right in here. But it's still beautiful the way that you've scored it. I really do love the the fingered tremolo in here. It's just such a lovely idea. I love fingered tremolo, but it's one of those things that I try to avoid overusing so that it doesn't turn into a cliche in my scoring. And I wouldn't say that it's a cliche here. I think it's just exactly right. Now, before we go too far forward into section C, I thought that it would be a pretty good idea to go over some of the evaluation criteria, because there are some things coming up where I feel you need to be clearer about your markings. All right, so about tempo markings. So at the beginning, it's careful treatment of the melodic voice to make it feel authentic to the composer's style, and certainly oboe and clarinet solos are definitely authentic to Falla. Keeping the accompaniment from becoming too regular and therefore too predictable. I mean, the way that some of these rhythmic elements feel suppressed, right? The clarinet and the double bass, just really feel like they're playing under a lot of these, these trills. I mean, I think the idea of the trill is lovely. Do you intend the trill to keep going here? Right? I'm not sure, right? I guess not. So, that I'd say the accompaniment pattern becoming too regular is not the biggest concern. I would say the accompaniment feeling static is possibly a danger, right? I mean, the music around it is extremely dramatic. The treatment of the melody, I really love these beautiful wide nuances. I mean, they're more than nuances. They're flexes, right? It's not like it's not like it's barely twitching a finger up and down in terms of the dynamics. It's more like a huge, like a bicep being flexed, right? It really has that muscular quality to the scoring, and I think you could have added even more in here and so on. But yeah, I mean, it's just, there are a lot of chords and pitches and so on in the background, and there isn't that sense of, that just sort of restlessness is what I miss. And I don't think that the restlessness can be replaced by trills and fingered tremolo. I think there actually needs to be some kind of 16th note sort of syncopation in there to really capture the kind of nervous energy of Falla's scoring right in there. So once again, you have an unused harp part that's, that could easily compete right in here. And then like not so much when things get very, very big here, but then you have other instruments that could possibly be helping out, right? So anyways, but not to go into that too much, it's still, it still is something to think about. But just to get back to the orchestration of this, I like the oboe coming in, and then the clarinet, solo clarinet right in there. Now, right in here, I like the way that you have pretty much ignored Falla's request to go diminuendo here, and I would say the right in here, the nervous energy is built right into the left hand part, into the bass part, and I think that it could easily be brought out right earlier. It just has that, and that's, the effectiveness of this is really playing off of the 16th note pattern that happened before, right? So if there's some way, if you do bring that back into the music in some way, it can fold into this, right? And then push forward into that, right? And I just feel it could just make your score just almost, overpowering, in terms of its suspense. I really love the way you build up on this, though. It's very, very nice. The dum-dum-dum-bum. That's just nicely done. Okay, and then right here, though, I just sort of have a question, and that is, how much timpani roll can you put into a piece before the audience starts to get used to it and just think, oh yeah, there's another timpani roll, right? Rather than going, oh my goodness, how she's turning up she's really turning up the tension here with that timpani roll. It's so amazing. But I mean, you've got it here, and then jumping forwards here, we've also got like a lot of timpani roll going forward, and then there's this beautiful timpani scoring in here, and so on. And then there's more timpani roll. So I just feel like you really are relying on that when there are other instruments that could do similar things. Like you could have, like right in here, you could have the basses doing tremolo on the pitch of E flat, right? So there are alternatives to just throwing in the timpani roll, right? And I know that it's not arbitrary. I know, every passage that you conceive, you are conceiving in a very logical way. You have the craft approach, Anna. It's not. I'm not taking you for granted or trying to diminish what you are accomplishing here in any way. But I'm just saying, like, when you add all the bits together, all of the decisions together, and say, well, timpani roll worked perfectly right in here, and it worked perfectly right in there. Right, and then it worked perfectly right in that other section. So how much timpani roll can I have, right? So that's, we're getting back to the whole sense of proportion that's so valuable in guiding us, and so far, like that, it is a very strong guide for you. You've used it in very wise ways in proportioning out the drama of different sections, right? So here's possibly a place where it can. It might serve you as well to sort of rethink. Now, one last little question right in here. You have a cymbal hit, and then it says to tam-tam, and then here you have a big tam-tam line, and it says to tambourine. Could we have just left this player on the tam-tam and had the cymbal player go to tambourine? But otherwise, now right in here, I like this. Just the line here, and the violins and the oboes plus flute, and just the little commentary from above from piccolo. I feel that's all really effective, and once again, that feels authentic to Falla. That's very nicely done. But here is where we need to start thinking about the whole question of managing restraint. Managing the sense of restraint and leading to a burst of energy. Now, you do think about those things, and that's fantastic, but those things you have to tell the conductor. Now, perhaps my little parentheses system text did not come through when you imported, if you imported my template into. I'm imagining that this is Dorico. Maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps it is Notion or MuseScore or something. But I'm pretty sure this is Dorico. I'm looking at the Bravura font here on. I think that's Bravura. So anyhow, maybe that system text did not come through, but it's extremely important, right? So here it's missing. So you do those changes, but you don't mark them, right? So just because I put them in parentheses doesn't mean that the conductor doesn't want to see them. I put them in parentheses because that is something that the pianists do in their score, and it's something that I recommend be done in the full score, right? In the orchestral version. So it's something that the conductor has to see, and it's something that's coming through in your mock-up. You were doing those changes. So if the mock-up is an indication of your intentions in terms of the tempo, then you have to say it here, right? So we need to have the poco rallentando. We need to have the sense of slowing down here or being slower. We need to see the poco animato right in here. We need to have that written out for the conductor and the players, right? And then we need to see rubato when we get to the right? So then the conductor and the players can shape the right, coming up. All right. Okay, so, but now let's talk about this right in here. So, so once again, this motion right in here is very suppressed compared to the fullness of the background harmony. But what's nice that the trading off, you start to amp up the energy as you start to go forward, and then bringing in these horns, they're wonderful. I don't know if you need 4 horns at once, but I think it is very powerful, right? So 4 horns, the horns will really start to compete with the continuity of the line in the first and second. And I see like you're piling on the energy to sort of make sure that doesn't happen. You have A2 trumpets and you have A3 oboes right in here. So it really is an attempt to make the horns not too loud, but like I mean, that is, it's almost like an Ein Heldenleben, right? It's hard to hold down that upward motion of the horns, right? It might be better to double the horns, say with like maybe some string instrument or some other kind of thing, rather than to quadruple them. But I really love the lower heavy brass in here. It's very nice. And see, like here, great harp scoring. One huge hand-over-hand roll. So that has a chance of being heard. Not the hugest chance, but a chance of being heard against everything else. And it'll fold right into everything else that's going on. But right in here, with this brass and the lower winds and strings and the pizzicato and everything, it'll just, especially the pizzicato, will absorb the sound of the harp. So it doesn't really have much of a chance right in here. But I think there's one thing that you're missing right in here, and that is the sense of drama at the end of the right. So what I scored in the score was parentheses fermata, and I think that that's really important information for the players and for the conductor. And then at the end is not in the piano score is not a staccato but an accent, right? And it is a tied note. So you don't have to really tie it across if you want these horns to be soli. However, I think you should get rid of the staccato and you should put in some kind of tenuto or some other kind of thing, right? I mean, think of the lines. Think of the drama of the lines. Dun 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 bum 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 bum. Dun dun dun. I mean, rather than bum 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 bum. Right? I mean, I think that it is really intended to be one of these cases where the conductor draws us out slightly, and then makes it slow down a tiny bit so the end is emphasized, right? And then the same thing again, the end is emphasized. So I think that end should end with an emphasis rather than a staccato. And then right here, I'd say unison horns is great. Bum, 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 bum. And I think that you should write in onomato, right? And then dun, dun, dun. This is a case where, if you have a single player, just, one solo player playing the ya da 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 da, it doesn't, they will just decide what to do, right? But if you have four players all playing together, then and you want that effect that you actually have in your mock-up, then you really should mark onomato, right? Or baccellerando or something, just to really kind of show that you're just really pushing, that you're condensing as you go. You're condensing the rhythmic information, the tempo information, really getting crammed. It's just a dramatic thing. And then, see, now here you have beautiful rhythmic scoring right in here. So why, there's so many opportunities for lovely bass rhythmic scoring before this, right? So why is it only here that we're seeing, this lovely kind of leaping approach? So, if here's the thing, Anna, is that this score, without messing with anything except for maybe cutting some harp and strengthening a few lines and so on, it's pretty much ready to, for the most part, it's fairly ready to go to the stands, right? It could be performed. So, how could we make it even more worthy, right? Like, how could we make this into something that could be performed night after night, hundreds of times, right? So you have to think like that is like when you get a score that has that much artistic value to it, are you really, are you willing to put in the work and really just make it something that could stand forever as the, hey, there was this competition, not competition. There was a challenge, and hundreds of people sent their scores to Thomas, and he looked at them and talked about them and so on. But this one score was the one that got played hundreds of times afterwards and became the score that was just thought of, right? And that's a chance with any of these scores, including mine, right? They're, should we be scoring with that in mind? Not to say, oh, we're all going to be immortal orchestrators or anything, but just to say, like, can we bring that sense of honor, that sense of completion to each of these scores that we do, and especially if you're putting this much work into it and scoring the entire thing, is there a way of making the different important parts of Falla's score important all the way through, right? So I think that the sense of leaping bass and at B, for instance, that's like, here you got it, and it's so effective, and it's so easy to score, you can see, right? So why is it absent from the other approach, right? So just things to think about, in terms of making the score more of a permanent work of art, I would say, right? So just, consider the things that got left out, are they worth putting in? And maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying that I am always right about everything. That your approach may be the one that is, the most desirable, right? I really don't know. But think about the things that got left out. Is there some way to work them back in? But this is really nice. Yada-da-dum with the cellos. Violas. Yada-da-dum. Really, really nice. Yeah, and then here you're trying to balance it. Fortissimo violas, mezzo forte violas to, forte and mezzo piano. They're still going to be way stronger than the violas, but the balancing is well taken. Now here, I just feel that the harp has almost no effect. Like towards the end, this is like, I would say, have the harps double this from here, but don't worry about this in here. This will not stand out with the cellos and the bassoons being so loud in that lower register. And of course the trombones, right? They're another thing that absorbs the sound of the harp, right? And then this is great. I mean, you kept it really simple, just in the lower strings. Now, from this next section, sorry I turned the page so quick, but I didn't really think that there was a whole lot to say about those lower strings. I think that's all effective and it works fine, and it's great. Not, we don't have to go over it. So heading forwards, so here you're seeing like there's just really is a lot of rolled timpani, and I mean I would say like what part can you do without, right? What part can you substitute perhaps tremolo double basses? I think you could do tremolo double basses in the earlier part better than you could do that here, because you sort of need the double basses here, and in the other part they're already holding down low notes. All right, so right in here at the più meno, it's interesting. You go slower than I recommended in the template, and I feel that works pretty good for the approach that you've got here. Now, whether or not the harp is going to be effective here, I think it could be if you had fuller harmony and it was rolled each time. And that is something that just two-handed, not hand over hand, but just roll, roll, dun, 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 roll. And so more than just 2 notes per hand, maybe 3 or 4 notes per hand, just like nice big juicy chords. Then the harp has got a chance on this page. But I mean, it's tricky, like anytime you throw in timpani or trombones, right, or horn, especially right in here, the harp has just almost no chance, right? Okay, so is it? One thing I would say is you should ask yourself is, do I want to slur everything because we just came off of just really just fast emphatic, and in the piano score it's you know what I mean. It's got the even with it's got right. So do we want, like, because the thing is that it's becoming hard to tell the bass part from da 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 da, which is also, we've also got this slurred, right? So it's slurred bass, slurred melody, slur, right? So where is how do we differentiate between the functions, right? But I mean, I do like the way that the melody is scored here. I think it's really nice, just nicely done, right? Just that little touch of horn in the middle there, and then bassoons and trombones. Da 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 dum. I almost feel like there needs to be just a little bit of doubling at the beginning of the violins. I know you want to hold off until later before you bring in more winds. But I just feel the strings, the violins and the cellos against the bassoons and the trombones. I almost feel like I would want them to be louder, just to be to sort of balance here from the beginning, like mezzo piano from here, crescendo, right? But in terms of fulfilling the whole question of like maintaining the rather hallucinatory feeling of the music, I think that you absolutely do that really, really well. I like the combination of the horns and clarinets, sort of getting fuller with the strings, and pushing forwards into this. Another thing you could possibly do here to strengthen what's going on is just have the seconds and the violas just double these lines, right? And then you don't have to bring in the winds, and you could just sort of leave everything the way that it is dynamically. All right, sorry, that just occurred to me. So, and then right in here, just piling on more and more. And then I really love this dramatic push into the next part. Yeah. Yeah, and then ah, three trumpets right in there. It's, it's excessive, but it's great. And it will be fine right in here. I would say if you're going to put this much weight on that line, what are the violas doing? What are they doing with their lives? Right. They're not going to be all that audible, if at all, up against three trumpets. Right, and then we get to hear this ba 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 da 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 da. Yeah. So I'm just kind of looking back and forth. I've got the original score. I'm just kind of looking to see how you scored things out. Okay, so this is something that I felt was, is a slight problem in some of these scores. Okay, and that is the fact that from this section onwards, the left hand jumps up and down, right? And I think that jumping up and down is really, really important. Bum 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 da 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 dum ba da 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 dum ba 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 bum. Do you know what I mean? And I think that it's so easy to fix. It's something you could just stick right in here and it would be fine. Like, just dropping everything down an octave, and then back to where you were, and then down an octave again. And because that sense of interplay is really important because essentially, like the full scoring here, as dramatic as it is actually fairly static, right? What is going on in the right hand of the piano part is just basically, these big octave chords and octave melodies, and then the left hand is alternating between that bass line and then just supporting chords in syncopation in between, right? So you got that ba 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 in the left hand, and then jumping at the da 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 right? So I think that the changing of the octave is one of those tiny key little points. Now, I understand why you're not doing it, and it's because you are worried that it will affect the timpani line, right? It's like you're trying to keep it in the same place because the timpani line works better that way. But actually, I would propose that it's fine that even when you drop it down, the timpani line I think will still come through beautifully. Yeah, and like a lot of times people may feel I'm sort of breezing through these tutti scoring sections, but the truth is that like tuttis are not the hardest thing to score. Yeah, I think you could just say unison here, divisi, and then unison, and then divisi again, or you could say divisi, unison, divisi, sim, and then just not worry about it afterwards, and you don't have to mark unison, divisi throughout the entire score. So if it's going back and forth between two things, you can just go divisi, unison, sim, sim period. Yeah. Yeah, so, that works for me. Right, okay, so the other thing too is, all right, let's jump back. Da 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 dum ba 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 bum da 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 dum ba 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 bum, and lower ba 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 ba. Do you see what I mean? So like the high, low, lower, right? So we have even more drama there. Falla has told us what to do. I think we should, I think it will really work, and especially it will work for your score, perhaps better than you realize. See, because here you do finally make the drop, right? Right? It's high and then low, right? All right, so da 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 dun. So yeah, I know in the piano score in the right hand there is a quarter note, but what if it was all eighth notes all the way through with everybody, and then you put in a pausa, a comma, right here. Some people might even think of it as an apostrophe. So a comma right in here. Da 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 da. Tiny breath to allow the sound, especially of the timpani, and the tuba and bass trombone to subside, right? That there's that big push from the bass that will echo, not really echo, but will reverberate throughout the hall, right? So we need just a tiny bit of a lift, and then the agitato can start on the eighth note, right? Okay. So here's the problem here, right? Fortissimo, diminuendo to mezzo forte, and you can actually hear this in the mock-up. The background is fairly strong. And then you're going from there into this section, which we'll talk about, which also, has a fairly forward background. But we'll cover that in a second. Okay, so I feel that the strength of the accompaniment here, of the pad and the background chords, is something that that sort of subtracts from the energy here, right? It's like you have static energy and then you have active energy, right? So which one has more weight? Well, I think that the active energy should have more weight, right? Because what's great about this is Falla is just building up and building up to this just inexorable kind of place, and then he releases it, right? And he releases it into this wonderful, furious energy. And then that energy finally is released into a beautiful, calm, relaxed place. So it's all, it's beautiful calculations in the way that everything works here, right? So the active energy, I think, really needs to be respected in here, so that this stuff just really has to go into the background. And so I would say don't even start forte, just start piano, right? Just have this be piano all the way through. Just really keep it in the background. So that that's your and this is fine. See, like when you do that, then we can hear the harp really beautifully. The harp is accompanying the strings really nicely. I think that it all works great. So one last question here is, do we really need the rolled timpani? Could we have a situation where we had tremolo double basses, right? Because if you are going to take my advice and get very, very soft in here, the effect is almost identical, and yet is less of an overuse of that sound. And now for the charming final section. And I feel that I have the same comments here as the previous little phrase. I think that your accompaniment needs to be way down in the, I think that the harp in here is just right. I think that the little accompanying strings are great. But I feel that, once again, we have static energy competing with active energy. So the static energy really needs to be in the background. It's too far in the foreground. You're saying mezzo piano, crescendo, and so on, and all this other stuff. And look, right here, your melody is softer than your accompaniment, right? Mezzo piano continuing on. So really, just this has to be in the background. It has to, especially with trombones, right? Trombones are just like they have such a penetrating energy, a penetrating sound, even at piano. So I'd say bring everything down to pianissimo, right? That isn't active. But I mean, I really like the nuances. I think that's great. The dynamic nuances. Now, there are a few wrong notes in here, or just a few notes that clash a little bit. Like here you want to go, ya da 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 da. Right? And then but the harmony doesn't follow. There's a change of harmony in here, but the accompaniment doesn't, or the static background doesn't follow the harmonic change. And then here, it isn't just ya do dee da do dee da do dee. It's da 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 da. Right? That's like it's there's something happens here at the end in the last beam group, which is different from what you've scored in the harp. So it really should be restored. Right, and then there is the F double sharp, in the harmony, right? So, and I'm just, so shouldn't we have that in the bassoons as well? Right, so we have the F sharp and then the F double sharp here. So I think you really have to respect those changes. Okay, but like other than that, I really have no problem with this. And I think it's really charming and beautiful, and it's exactly what's needed after that. You just really need to bring down, the cushion. The cushion is too big, right? The bed is too soft. So that you need to make the that I can barely hear in the mock-up. I can barely hear the accompaniment. The harp is you've marked it up to forte, but you can hear for yourself that with those trombones in there and the clarinets and so on, it's very, very hard to hear. And part of that is because clarinets are also a timbre that absorbs the sound of the harp. So this just has to come back. It just has to go way down. Everything should be pianissimo. And I would say that's true for the bass instruments as well. Just really bring things down. And then you don't have to worry about nuances in your background. You could just have the background be pianissimo all the way through. And then maybe here it could swell slightly. The background, instead of diminuendo here, the background could swell slightly with the change of harmony, right? And then releasing back into here. All right, and then that's nice. Okay, what if the roll was all the way across the harp? You could always have like and then non-arpeggiando, right? So it was just really, really clear that you did intend to roll, and then you didn't, because like the way that this is scored, the harpist will just sort of lightly roll everything. Yeah, so I would just say I would if you want that effect, have the roll cover all of the strings, one big roll, okay, but of course softly, and then say just write. You don't have to put in brackets or anything. Just write non-arp, and then roll, and then another roll, and then non-arp again, and then another roll and another roll, right? So this should be applying here. I think that like the way that this is scored with a separate roll in either hand, it's just distracting to the music. But otherwise, this is really nicely done. I love that. The flutes, oboes, piccolo, and so on all working together. That's great. And then, we are going from a sense of icy distance here to transitioning to a sense of intimacy, and then to suspense. So you do all that really, really well. Yeah, and then the most people are choosing to put clarinets right in here, just as I did, and you are choosing to put in bassoons, and that's really great. And then bump, 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 that little Jaws theme in the background. And this is nice. The bassoons working together. Bum, bum. And then the bassoons underneath the violas. I think that works really nicely. And then here, everything is great except for one thing, and that is you need to tie, right? It's da-dum, and then adding the violins, right? So this B should tie to that B, right? This B should tie to that B. This E should tie to that E, and so on. Tie, right? Because you're not going da-dun, dun, right? The music doesn't do that. The notes that the pianist has already played are not played again, right? So just tie the notes that happened previously, right? Yeah, so tie all of these notes. All of the notes, the E above and below, the B in the middle, and so on. Just have them continue going the sounding E here, which is written F sharp, and so on. I'm just seeing. Okay, so this one and this one are the same, and so you don't really want that bass clarinet to play this for it a high C sharp. So maybe do a slur, right, and then have the bass clarinet come in and play this. Yeah, very nicely done, Anna, just all the way through. So, I hope that my suggestions won't be taken amiss. I'm not saying in any way across this that this piece, that this score is anything else but inspired and really well done. However, if you had come to me as an orchestration consultant, this is what I would sit down and work on with you. If we were going to get your piece ready to be performed by the Berlin Philharmonic tomorrow, right? So, so that is, so that's that's what we would work on with me as your editor. But just like I don't feel that any of the changes that I suggested would interfere with your intentions whatsoever. I think that they would elevate them, right? So that is really my goal in all of these evaluations, is not to change anybody's mind necessarily, or change the nature of anybody's inspiration, but to see if there's some way of making it even more effective and stronger. And I feel that, like, the stronger the score, the easier that is to do. And yet, if I go on and on about it, it's just because the work deserves that kind of focus and attention and thoroughness. So I really do appreciate, Anna, the work that you put into this score. I feel it was terrific, and I so much appreciate your support on Patreon. That means a lot, and it is very, very helpful, both to me personally and to the thousands of composers out there who rely on this channel for their progress artistically and craft, and of course, I mean, I'm so honored that people have come to think of the Orchestration Online community as a resource for them. And I'm just trying everything I possibly can to keep up, keep more resources flowing, and to talk about new things that I haven't talked about before. So I'm just not repeating myself over and over again. So the support that the Patreon, my Patreon crowd is offering is absolutely key to that. And I feel that the channel is about to go through, with some of the new ways of sharing resources that, the master classes and the film score reviews and so on. I feel that we're kind of about to go to another level yet again. So thanks so much for being part of that, Anna, and thank you to everybody out there who has stuck through this video to the end to hear this. I really appreciate everybody's comments, reactions, and really do give Anna some feedback if you possibly can. I think that this score is really worthy, and it's something that even if this arrangement were to never be performed, it would still be something that Anna could build on artistically into whatever next project that she had coming up. So terrific entry. Really, really excited, and a great way to start my day here in New Zealand. So thanks, everybody, and here comes another evaluation right around the corner.